All right.
Okay.
Continue. I can't hear you, Richie. You muted yourself.
There we go. I unmuted myself. So I'm going to mute myself in a second and let you get started on it. And you can start with Malcolm's question. And again, anybody else, just unmute when you want to and join in. And if, you know, we're still in a small group, we can unmute everybody as long as we're on background noise.
Well, I'd actually like to, if it's all right, do a quick presentation, if that's all right with you guys. What do you think, Malcolm? Now, let me see if I get this right. Jimson and I were practicing today. So is this right? No,
Well,
it's
that's
wrong.
still your one with notes on it.
Okay, so there?
There, that's it.
All right. So thanks to Jimson, who's helped me with this. So basically a quick thing. I like to try to bring themes to these talks. So after last conversation, I thought I'd do patterns and muscle synergy. And I don't know about you guys, but I approach everything from a philosophical point of view, even though I am a scientist at heart. I also like to bring in philosophy or a thought process because, I mean, before there was science, there was philosophy, and the love of wisdom is what philosophy is. So I put this together, this presentation, this power presentation, and I started off with the flower sermon. Now, the flower sermon, Buddha, when he gave a talk to his students a long time ago, all he did was he pulled up a flower, and a lot of people gleamed into the idea that what he was trying to say with this flower is that it's, even though there's form, it's formless at the same time because there are patterns involved with the flower itself, as you can see here in this diagram. But more importantly, there are formless patterns that lie underneath things that actually, or forces or tensions or tendencies that actually help form pattern and movement. So what he basically was getting at was unity and order, patterns and synergy and harmony. But the one thing that really impressed me about this talk, and there's a word called in Greek called dineria, which basically means through energy. So in a nutshell, what it's saying is that you create patterns through the force or the flow of energy. And this is what struck at home with me with the flower sermon. Now, patterns, everybody knows Escher with all his diagrams, all his prints and all this. And I thought, well, how best to start off this idea of pattern and synergy? Now, we know synergy is just joining and cooperation, which is part of pattern. But pattern is something more. Pattern is something that is morphed or developed or created or helps create other patterns in itself. And this is what I get when I look at Escher's work and the whole idea of metamorphosis, the creation of from one end going to the other. The same thing with an athlete. We start with a young athlete, we metamorphose him, we develop him until we get him to the point of where he's competing, and then after that, we, believe it or not, we have to demorphose. It takes, I remember a long time ago when I was talking with several coaches in Canada that when we were all studying the Russian system, you know, of training, Matiev was the father of periodization, contrary to a lot of popular belief, but he basically, I remember it was him or there was a guy, a traumatologist, a sports traumatologist in Bulgaria named Shwalyev, who basically said to me that the one thing we have to look at with athletes, if it takes us 15 years to develop an athlete, it takes us another 15 years to de-develop them. So even though we morphose an athlete, we also have to look at how we're going to help that athlete's body get back to stage one to function in life. So Escher to me embodies the whole idea of patterns and morphosis or metamorphosis. So I thought I'd bring that in place. Now, this is the whole system, as we touched upon last week, the proprioceptive system. And this is the system that helps determine pattern because it can pick up tension, stress lines, how the body responds to all these forces is very, very important. And it goes through the neural system, and it's the neural system, or the integration of the nervous system, as I said last time, which is very, very important for helping to form pattern for movement, sprinting, jumping, all this stuff. So you take something that was gross movement patterns and you actually make it more finite. And it's all through this system here. Now, as we touched upon last week, we touched upon compression. And these are the forces, these are the things that create these patterns. And most athletes, all of us, even now with me sitting here, we're dealing with the force of compression. So, but in sports, we use tension, and in stretching is predominantly a tension energy created. In order to create stretching, you have to use tension. So you have to put the force in there to elongate the muscles, which is where we're going to touch on the ELDOA method that Malcolm actually sent me a question on the ELDOA method. We're going to touch upon that. And I think what this method works through a lot is through tension itself. As we said last time, shearing. Shearing is a very important thing. From a cardiovascular point of view, I don't know if you guys know this, but if there's no shearing in the actual vessels themselves, the cells that where the blood touches begin to die. And this is where we get the plaque formation. So shearing is a very, very important force for keeping our vascular bed very, very healthy. And then we touched on rotation and then bending, but it's the top three forces that I think create most of the patterns that we see in sports and in movement. And obviously the big one is gravity. Sir Isaac Newton just had a big apple fall upon him there. So these are the things that create patterns. Now, the other thing too is this angel here is a Albert Dürer painting, or a woodcut. But what I like about it the most is the intent of using mathematics. And this is what we try to do from a therapeutic point of view, from a training point of view, from anything that we actually look at. How is the body how can we change the body to be able to create or attempt the feats that we actually try to do through sports? And then how can we take that body that has been somewhat traumatized in sports and be able to help it heal? So this is patterns again, synergies, how they all work together, harmony, disharmony. We have to keep looking at those things. Last time we touched upon, this is like a quick interview, we touched upon the planes of the body, and it's very, very important to realize that it's a multi-level thing. You just can't see movement as a linear thing because there are forces that are working three-dimensionally. We talked about a centrated joint and one that's not decentrated, and how we said that that's because there are, forces that work on pulling the joint out of place. So you have more tension in one area, more compression in another, and these cause the disharmony in the joint. And when this joint is in a position like this, it is more likely to cause damage and eventually maybe a hip replacement. And then last week we touched upon this stuff here, which was basically the clutch system of the body. Like I said before, the hip flexors are basically the muscle group that, if you think about it, connects the upper body to the lower body, and they are one of the strongest muscle groups, and they're the most overdeveloped muscle groups in our bodies because we use them a lot. We use them every day, from sitting, standing, walking up and down stairs, from getting into the athletic stance. This muscle group is the one that basically not only gets overdeveloped, but it also adds, now that I could use a pointer, this is your SI joint. And this is the joint that will get compromised if these muscles are very, very tight and we don't look at alleviating the tension that they're causing in the body. Interestingly enough, if you look carefully, this here's my thing, L1, 2, 3, 4, and this is T12. Now, the interesting thing about the hip flexors, I don't know if you know, there's a condition called spondylolisthesis, which basically means the slippage of the SI. So predominantly, it's actually L4, L5, sometimes L5, S1. But what it is the vertebrae is slipped forward this way. And if you look carefully, that's because of the hip flexors. If they're tight, they will pull on the vertebrae and pull it forward, which would actually, and also these are the muscle group that causes that hyperlordotic curve that you see with a lot of athletes that have very, very tight hip flexors. And on my right side, we also look at what I said before, the thoracolumbar fascia in red and the trapezius diamond. These things work in unison with the hip flexor. So if you have issues on the right side, lower right side, you're going to have issues on the upper left side as well. So there's the idea of how patterns are formed in the body through muscle itself and muscle tension. So basically, in a nutshell, I did these two diagrams that you're going to see one after the other about a balanced system, a system that is that has harmony in it, that the agonist and the antagonist. So let's say the agonist in this case is the quadricep hip flexors, and the antagonist is the hamstrings. So in a balanced way, you're going to look at them working in a unison, in a synergy point of view that's going to allow us to have movement without pain. But if you look at it in a compensated system, the agonist in this case, the hip flexors are very, very tight. They will lengthen. That lengthening is a tense position in this case of the hamstring. So what we want to do as therapists is we want to be able to get back to this form of a balanced system or a harmonious system. And then again, just to quickly reiterate the whole concept of microstretching, of the intensity, duration, and frequency. We said that the intensity has to be very, very light, very, very low intensity stretching. So it's 30 to 40% of maximum perceived stretch, duration 60 seconds, and the frequency 3 times per muscle group, because there's a habit in the body. Habit forms a pattern, and in order to break that pattern, we have to create a new habit. And then stability, balance, and control is the whole idea of placing the body in a proper position where you're going to alleviate as much tension or contraction as possible in the muscle group. And then the other thing that's very important is there has to be a sequence of the stretches themselves in order to help the body recover properly. Last time I touched upon my left ankle, and the way I sequence the stretches for my left ankle is I will do my quad hip flexors first, and then I will do my lumbar area. And after that, I'll focus on my glutes, and then I will go down and start stretching my soleus muscle, which helps alleviate my issue with my left ankle. And that's just me again. And that's my short presentation. Let me get rid of this thing now, end slideshow. Now, Malcolm mentioned something. Just unmute us there, Richie. There's not many of us anyways. So
yeah, and go get rid of the share screen unless you're going to show something else.
Oh, Femi's here too. Hey, Femi. Share screen. How do? Oh, yeah. Stop share. Gotcha. So I don't know how many people heard what I just said.
No, this is something else.
Malcolm posed a question to me on email about ELDOA. I'm not very versed in ELDOA, the ELDOA method, but I did do my homework, and it was a technique developed by a doctor of osteopathy, Guy Voyer, and his whole idea is, if I remember rightly, he's working through the fascial system, Malcolm. You know, and what he does is he puts or replaces people in positions where he creates tension through the fascia. Correct? I don't know if and I think Dan Pfaff uses this a lot.
Right.
One particular way now that I've got more of a, let's say, let me see. So let's see if we can get this happening now. There. So the way the ELDOA method does for the lower back is he'll get the person, so he'll get his seating bone right up against this wall here, like so, and then he'll get the person's legs up against the wall, making sure that his butt is up against the wall. And then what he does is he actually causes a rotation and tries to create tension through the fascia. And then he tries to get you to tuck your chin, and then basically what he's trying to do is he's trying to work the fascial system while you're creating tension. And the whole idea about the ELDOA method is that he's saying that with this longitudinal stretching, that he's trying to open up joint capsule space. Did I get that right, Malcolm?
Yeah, as much as I understand it. I mean, of all the things all the areas I posed the question about, ELDOA would be the thing I know least about, and at least intuitively to me, it seemed not opposite, but counter to some of what you were doing. And again, for a general term, the muscle balancing involved in applied kinesiology. So I think if you remember the whole of the question, it was about how do these all interplay with each other, if at all?
Okay, so speaking from my experience in my work, I guess the best analogy is there's many ways to, and Jimson, jump in because it was your analogy. There's many ways to make a muffin, or there's many ways for somebody to go to the supermarket. Now, the one thing that concerns me is the concept of tension. So if tension is aggressive to the point where the person is placing their bodies in some form of discomfort, again, and I'm not saying that that method is wrong. It may work for another athlete. It may not work for other athletes. But what I'm trying to get at is if we look at the universal concept of pain and what pain entails and the whole idea of inflammation, my tendency would be that I would look at trying to remove anything that's going to cause pain and discomfort, because I don't want to stimulate the inflammatory response or the inflammatory system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know that his whole idea is by creating this tension, this fascial tension in there, and doing this, he's saying that he claims that that way you can actually open up the space between the joints, because we are involved with a lot of compression through gravity, through walking. Everything is compressed force. But then I say, why? And the example they used is they said that they've been able to cause an increase of space, which then actually helped rehydrate the discs. And this is what they're saying in the lumbar area.
Right.
Now, one of the best ways of rehydrating your disc, believe it or not, is sleep. So,
okay.
And sleep is something that doesn't cause a lot of tension in the body itself. So now, if I were to compare what I do with the ELDOA method, mine doesn't work through tension. Mine works through basically the lever systems of the body. So I'm actually using the joints themselves, placing the joint in a position which is causing that external force on my muscle, which is going to give me that length that I want to remove tension from the body. Because again, as I said, stretching is a tensile force. It basically, you need to create force in the muscle to stretch it, you know? So my whole concept has been, if I'm going to do that, I want to minimize any type of pain and discomfort or inflammatory response in the body itself, you know. And I see a lot of people here that are now, like I've worked with Femi in England with his athletes as well, and we worked on Jade. And again, the whole idea was when these athletes came to me, I'm looking at their tensile lines. I'm looking at how their bodies have compensated, because one part of the body is tighter than the other. Could it have been a hip flexor issue, an IT band, a quad? But then I'm trying to reverse that tension by applying a gentle force to first and foremost, which is very, very important, is to, lack of a better phrase, deactivate the neural system. Because when the nervous system is on, okay, it's active, it can cause tension in the body. So I think what the ELDOA method might be doing is, why they may be getting that release is they've placed the body in a position where the neural system is now active, and eventually it has to relax by fatigue. And this is when you get that relaxation response. So right. I'm saying, why do we have to go through aggressive tension when we can go through another method which is more gentle on the body and allows the body to relax? Because by relaxing the neural system, then you're relaxing the muscles themselves, then you're taking that pressure off the joint. Okay. Does that help?
Oh yeah, as I said just now, it's I'm not claiming to know a lot about any of those areas I mentioned, but it's the one I knew least about, and it appeared to be the outlier compared to microstretching, the muscle balancing of applied kinesiology, and some of the work that I'd seen Dan doing. And so, with those other three, the simplistic way I looked at it is it appeared to be balancing the body to really enable the athlete to make the most of their biomotor abilities, if you will. I mean, it just to maximize what they already have. I can't remember. It was 4 or 5 years ago, I think I first saw people doing what we might call ELDOA exercises without even knowing what it was. But around that time, I ran into a whole bunch of neurological problems, and at least initially, it seemed to offer me some recovery from what I was dealing with. And so, but I've not practiced it at all. I've not done any coaching for years, so I've not had athletes do it. But after last week, it seemed that it was a question that needed to be asked.
And and I'm glad you asked that question, because the thing is, I've said this, and a lot of people who know me know that I don't say microstretching is the panacea of all therapies. And like I said, I use the analogy, if you're going to go to the market, you can take many ways to get to the market. If you're going to create a good muffin, you're going to remove the sugar, you're going to put different type of recipes in there. But the one thing I've always said and never veered away from is the concept of pain and discomfort. That's the one thing that I always bring to the table. And this is when I'm looking at other therapies. Like back in the 1990s, there used to be PNF stretching. PNF stretching was huge. How many of us remember it? How many of us were exposed to it? And the thing that really got to me is, and that's where I met Carmen back in 1990 at UBC days. This is like a whole little community. There's Femi, UK Athletics. Now he's at Loughborough University. Say hi, Femi. There's Femi and Jimson. We go way back. And Tom Tom listened to me on World Speed Summit, and Tom's from Hong Kong, was in Hong Kong at the time. And then Mike Chimello is my new student who I'm working with. So, and Richie, everybody's known Richie. But the thing is, getting back to my thing about PNF stretching, when PNF stretching first came on the scene, and coincidentally, that was the impetus that led me to develop microstretching. When I was looking at trainers training people with PNF stretching, these people were being, put in positions where they were, I kid you not, they were screaming in pain, even though they held the stretch for 6 to 10 seconds at isometric contraction, which the trainer was pushing against them. And I kept thinking to myself, there's got to be something wrong here. So why are we creating aggressive sort of a pain or discomfort and trying to help the body get to the new level? Now, the whole idea behind PNF stretching, which is very, very interesting, it was developed in the 1950s by Dr. Stanley Kabat and Mary Voss. She was a physiotherapist. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to use, remember that a diagram that I showed early on about the proprioceptive tissues, the muscle spindles and the Golgi tendon organ. So what their whole idea was, how can we trick the body into letting go using the proprioceptive tissues? Because that is the communication of our body to our environment. Anytime you do movement, those tissues are involved, and they're the ones that give us the ability to adapt to training, to adapt to anything that involves that communication between our physical body and our environment. So they actually were working with, and this is a funny story. In 2005, I gave a talk at the FA Medical Conference in Lilleshall, which is a very beautiful place. And if anybody gets a chance to go to Lilleshall, by all means go. It's the National Training Center. It was the first national training center in all of the UK, but that's where the FA used to base their science. Forget his name, it'll come to me. Anyways, so I gave a talk there, and PNF stretching in 2005 was becoming very, very much used a lot in the English Premier League and in the UK. And we had, back in North America, we had moved away from PNF stretching by about the 2000s, 2003. It was used, but not a lot. So I said, who here, and this was 130 individuals there, and I said, who here uses PNF stretching? 130 hands went up. And then I said, let me be the first to say that it's not cracked up to be what it's supposed to be. And I got all these funny looks. And then I said, who here knows the actual origin of PNF stretching? No one knew. PNF stretching, like I said, started in the 1950s. However, it was used to deal with child onset paralysis. So it had kids that didn't have a good command of the neural system. So what they tried to do is they tried to basically allow or do something with the proprioceptive tissues so they can walk a lot easier to try to remove tension in the body. Now, the issue becomes when you've got an athlete that's got a good command of their body and you're getting them to contract for those 6 to 10 seconds aggressively to the point of pain, what are you doing to the tissue? And this is what was my aha moment that said, maybe this is not the way to go. And that's how I developed microstretching, which is like, why not look at the reverse? Why not be very gentle and see what effects you get? And that's how I started putting together all these stretches about body support. And then I started working with patients, from taking the concept of being gentle and not causing more pain and discomfort and tension in the body. Any questions?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to introduce you to Janine Homeland, and she has a question for you, Nikos.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. So
I
came in very late. Sorry. I just learned that this was happening. And you had mentioned a whole chain sequence that you could follow to get all the way down to your ankles. And you started up with the quads. And
yeah, I'll show you the thing. I'll show you the thing because now I've got this webcam that moves, which is fantastic.
Welcome to the 21st century.
See, it's quite, thanks. What's interesting
That's ugly.
is if you look now, it is ugly and it feels ugly. This is actual bone growth. Now compare this to my right ankle, and you can see quite a demarcation, a definition of comparison between the left and right. One thing you should realize is that bone needs a stimulus. So any force will cause bone growth. I think in South Africa in the 1950s, they used to, some surgeon came up with this great idea of removing the menisci because he thought they're not needed. Well, I worked with a patient in Vancouver who came to me, and his knee joint was this big because he had no meniscus in there. And all it was the grinding of bone upon bone, which caused that growth. So the same things happen with my left ankle. Now, the way I deal with my left ankle is I initially start off with this thing. And the first stretch for me, Janine, is to work my quads. Can you guys see this? Yes.
Yep.
So I work my quads first for a minute. And then from here, I go into my hip flexor stretch. Now, the whole idea, Janine, is to support the body. So I will then, after holding the stretch here and working my quads, relaxing my quads. See, by relaxing the quads, you're indirectly going to relax the hip flexors because the hip flexors connect high up into the femoral bone. So from this stretch here for a minute, then I will go, as you can see, let me see, yeah. If I'm stretching my left hip flexor, I'm supporting my left body, trying to take a lot of stress off the hip flexor. So I hold that stretch for a minute, and then I go back here to work my quad, and then I will go to the other side and work my right hip flexor. I'm trying to get this, yeah. There we go. Better than last week, eh, Richie?
Yep.
And then my right hip flexor. So I will do that sequence 3 times. And then what I do, because of my soleus, so now let me see. And I get this right here. Okay. After I do that, I will take something like this, place it on the bottom of my foot, like here, and then I will find tension in the back of my leg. Now you see, the big difference is I'm sitting down. If I were to stand up and try to stretch my soleus muscle now standing up is designed to do what it does naturally, which is postural. It's a postural muscle, and it's activated, same with the gastroc, so it'll prevent me from falling forward or falling back. So it's active right now. So it makes no sense for me to continue stretching a muscle while it's contracting at the same time. You may think, oh, if I've got this here and I'm feeling it, well, I'm surely to God stretching it. No, no, no. What it is your muscle is contracting and you're trying to lengthen it at the same time, which is what eccentric force is when we're doing eccentric exercises, correct? So if I want to relax the soleus, all I do is I sit down. As soon as I sit down, this muscle is much more relaxed. And now I actually can focus on getting a stretch, make sure that the ankle is down on the ground itself. And I place something on the balls of my foot so I could actually pick up a gentle stretch in the back of my leg. Hold that for a minute. The beauty about this stretch here too is, how many of us suffer from plantar fasciitis? Nobody? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, do the stretch here because it actually relaxes the plantar. I do have plantar fasciitis because of the ankle here. The reason why you create a lot of tension in the plantar area is because the calf muscle is tight. There's a lot of tension in there, which then puts the foot in the plantar flexion, okay? And it creates a lot of tension through the fascia in here. By doing this stretch this way, you're gonna relax. Now, what I also do, and this is where, Malcolm, you might pick up an idea because you mentioned how ELDOA uses the whole system to release the tension through creating tension. Now, if I actually have an issue with my lumbar area, I will take this. Now remember, support, support, support. I will have the stretch happening here, I will rotate. Remember we said the thoracolumbar fascia, remember that hip flexor and then the two diamond shapes in the back? Now, if I am stretching my left soleus, if I actually now rotate and come forward this way, now I'm getting this, and Tom Walsh, this is an anatomy thing, the anatomy gaps. Now I'm getting this whole chain working, and I'm supporting myself. And now I'm working that whole tension out of this side, and then I will go to the other side like this and rotate this way and come forward. Now I'm supporting my whole, sorry. You guys get to see this. So you guys got the whole soleus idea. So I've got the thing underneath my right foot, and now I'm rotating my body this way, and I just come forward. The moment I sense support, my neural system relaxes. And now I'm working that whole chain. You know, if you've got some glute issues, besides lying down and putting your, and I can show you that one. Another one for my glutes is I will just bring my leg over this way, support my body as much as I can, forward tilt my upper body, and now I get a glute stretch. So, Janine, to answer your question, that is the sequence I go through to relax my ankle, my left ankle. But the sequencing is very, very, very important.
Hey, Nika's question about that right there.
What?
The question about that right there, does the surface or the softness of the surface matter? Like on the bed, it's a very soft surface. Do you?
Oh, of course it does. Of course it does. Yes, it does. It's very, very important because you have to have a firm surface.
So in other words, you wouldn't do that normally on the bed itself unless it was really firm.
No.
Okay.
I've got nowhere else, so I could use the chair, but this is actually very important.
Yeah.
You want, you know, the thing is, you got to be able to feel those tensional lines in your body. Now, Mike and Jimson have done microstretching in the past, and Jimson alluded to he had a grade 2, grade 3 hamstring tear, and he was advised not to do any stretching, but he did microstretching. And I know Peter last time asked the question, do you need to warm up in order to stretch this way? And the answer is no. And Jimson didn't warm up either. But the thing is, the most important thing is to place your body in a position where you're going to relax the neural system, and that'll take tension out of the body itself. And I don't know, when I do my stretching before I go to sleep, I kid you not, I mean, Mike Chimello said this yesterday as well, is that I get so relaxed that my body starts feeling cold. Now, this is the one thing that I have with my patients as well that have been treated by me in the clinic. The one thing that they say after about 20 minutes is they start feeling cold because I'm relaxing the nervous system. So how does that relate? When you guys, before you guys start falling asleep or starting to fall asleep, just when you get to that stage of real deep sleep, that's the parasympathetic nervous system. And that is the one that cools the body down and gets you ready for sleep. So this is the same thing we're feeling when we're doing microstretching itself. You know, any questions?
I was telling Janine, because she joined a little late and she wasn't on this the last time, but all of the presentations, the video, the diagrams and things from the one with the Congress we did a couple weeks ago, as well as last week's video, are on that drive. And this one I'm recording and can put on the drive too, so you can see the presentation in that. And I put that on here. I'm going to put that for everybody because I might have just put it for Janine. So if you don't have that drive, there it is right there on the chat.
Okay. Questions, anybody? Tom, you were going to bring a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah, but not really a question. It's more like actually a tip for everyone. What you were talking about, pain. I've actually found that you can actually get some really useful clues from the pain. And I agree with you. You want to hold back from it because the nervous system's just going to fight it. But if you're dealing with any of your athletes or any of your clients and you find that they have pain symptoms in not just a stretch, like any movement, think, is it a closed angle or an open angle pain? So what I mean by that is, if I'm doing that, this would be the opening angle, and that would be the closed angle. And so if you're getting the closed angle pain in this stretch, it's probably a joint aberration of some sort. It's probably some sort of issue with the joint. Whereas if you're getting the pain on this side, on the open side of the angle, it's probably going to be some sort of muscular restriction. And what I've done that it works really well with Nikos's microstretches is I've used something called controlled articular rotations, and I've done some of my own as well. And so what it does is it focuses on the joint. So you do the microstretching to ease off the nervous system if there's some sort of neural restriction, but you can actually improve the capsule of the joint. You can actually improve the integrity of the joint just by moving it. And you normally need to restrict the joints maybe above or below it because there will be compensations. The reason why you have some sort of problem in that joint will be because it's not really a functional joint, and something else like the radio ulnar or the elbow is trying to do its job. But I've just found, like, if you want to give your athletes something to do that's going to promote not only their performance but also their long-term wear and tear, combining microstretching with joint mobilization works really well. You just have to be very disciplined on what the movements that joint requires and making sure that they're not throwing in compensations. So someone like your ankle issue, Nikos, maybe give a try doing some stuff where you lock down the shin. So you're locking down this. I can actually send you a video of this as well, but you lock down the tibia and the fibula, and you regularly take the ankle through every bit of movement that it should be able to do, like inversion, eversion, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion. You do that at least 3 times a week, and you might find that you'll improve what that ankle is capable of doing. And also, I've also found that if you combine microstretching with those articulations, if you combine it with some isometric strength work, so if you've got any kind of issue with the joint where you can't get that joint to move, and I think if you take care of the joints, the muscles often will take care of themselves around the joint, unless you need like soft tissue work because there's some sort of like fibroblast infiltration in that muscle. But if you combine like isometric stretching, so whatever your ankle issue might be, I'm just using the ankle as an example, if you can take it to a sort of pain-free end range, and then you do something like PNF, but no pain involved. And you're just trying to generate force in both directions. You're kind of hitting it from 3 sides. You're getting the microstretching is telling the muscle through the nervous system, just calm down. You're actually giving yourself a better joint. And by regular move, because mobility is use it or lose it. And if you're regularly sending back to the nervous system, listen, I need an ankle that can do this, 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 and this, and this, and I do it at least 3 times a week, the message that will go back to the nervous system is give this guy a new ankle. Whereas if you're not doing it, or if you're doing it in a way that hurts yourself, the message that goes back to the nervous system is this guy's an idiot, he's going to hurt himself. Every time he tries to do this, just try and get him to stop it. So if you take the microstretching, the joint mobilization, and then if you combine it with strengthening in pain-free isometrics, you're sending the message back to the nervous system. I actually have some strength here. I actually have some control here. You can actually let me go here. It's not as much of a problem as I thought it was. So those are just 3 things that I've done together. The 2 things I've added to microstretching, and just very, very safe and measurable improvements. works better than a lot of the other stuff out there.
Like I said, Tom's got this thing called anatomy gaps. So if you guys get a chance to look them up. Now, the thing is, Tom, this is why I like these conversations, because they sort of initiate thoughts in my head. There's a lot of junk in here, guys. When people came to me, for instance, with carpal tunnel syndrome, I don't know how many have suffered from carpal tunnel syndrome. I don't know how many have had athletes or non-athletes, but I've never focused here on the actual radial ulnar area where the 8 sort of wrist bones. My focus has always been higher up, which was the neck shoulder area. If you watch carefully, a lot of people that have carpal tunnel, they do a number of things. One is, because of the pain, they do this with their joint. Just watch carefully. They actually clench it like this. And the whole idea is because they're trying to prevent from going through that range that's going to cause them pain. So if I've got this clutch system happening here in my hand, what's it doing to my forearm muscles? It's activating them at the same time. And then it moves up the chain into my neck. So what I do with a lot of my people that have had this issue is I look at their posture. And the one thing I notice, which is really, really amazing, is that they actually have this happening. So this whole system here right now, if you're talking about fascia, Tom, the whole fascial system right here has been shortened into this position. And the issue then becomes, if I want to alleviate what's happening down the joint, further down the joint, which in this, or the whole system, which in this case is the actual wrist joint, I need to basically look at the bigger muscles, which is the pec, major, minor, and I've got to open them up. If I open them up, now I'm going to help open up the fascia itself. If I open up the fascia itself, it's going to work itself down into the actual ulnar radius wrist bone area, which is going to relieve the carpal tunnel. And what carpal tunnel is inflammation of these joints down here. It's very, very important. Now, Tom mentioned something about, you said long angle, short angle, Tom? If I get this rightly? What did you say? Unmute yourself, Tom.
If you think of the open and closed.
Open and closed. So
if that's opening, that's closing.
Yeah. Okay, in this case, now look, guys, I've only got this much range because I've got scar tissue. I almost lost my hand, a chop saw. So I've got damage. Anyways, so open, close. Now, here's something really interesting. This is going to add to Janine's question about sequence of stretching. Now, when I get people to do a certain sequence of stretching, and for instance, I'm going to demonstrate, and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So,
hey, Nikos, not to interrupt, but you got about 10 minutes.
Holy smokes! You mean that's that quick, eh? All right. Yeah. I'll be quick about this one. It gives people an idea. So, if I'm doing a sequence of stretching, so the sequence of stretching I'm doing is soleus, glutes, hamstrings, okay? Those are the stretches, and those are on that talk that we did a long time ago with Richie. So calf, glute, hamstring, groin, and then the next stretch is the IT band. So this stretch here. You guys see this? No, you can't. Tell me if you can see this, guys.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Now, if this is the next stretch in the sequence, here's the clue. If I'm pulling my leg over this way, and instead of getting a stretch out in the IT band piriformis, I'm getting a pinching sensation right in here. That's not a high groin pull. That's a hip flexor. So in this particular case, what I would do then with the athlete is I would actually get them to stretch out their hip flexor, because that's the issue of concern. So when Tom was mentioning open angle, closed angle, and you're feeling something here in the joint, and this muscle's getting stretched here. The other thing that you got to look at with the joint too is if the joint's moving in this case. So in my case, I'm moving my leg over. So I am closing the joint and making the joint smaller, the hip joint, towards my pubic bone. And what I'm getting is a pinching sensation of the hip flexor because it's tightening up. So I have to stretch the hip flexor first, then I go into my glute piriformis IT band stretch. So what am I saying is if during the sequence you're picking up a sensation in a muscle group opposite to what you're trying to stretch, you need to stretch that muscle first and then follow the sequence after that. So you're changing it. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. The other thing too you got to keep in mind about joints, which is very, very important, is the bursa sacs. Bursa sac is a little sac that basically is by the joint, and what it does is it actually, so if the muscle is in front of the bursa sac, it allows the lubrication to happen. When the bursa sac gets inflamed too, when you're closing a joint, you'll pick up pain as well in that area. So bursa sacs are the things that you've got to keep in mind when you're doing stretching as well. And it leads to bursitis, as we say. Any other, how am I doing for time, Richie?
Oh, about 5 minutes.
Any questions? Like, guys, please, I mean, bring questions, because this is what we're trying to do with this chat thing, is just get together once a week and just have fun and stuff and see how we can help with your athletes and sort of give you guys ideas with how to help the bodies heal or help your athletes heal.
And hey, I've got an idea, because I messaged Tom about the anatomy gaps when you mentioned that and said he's going to email me, but maybe that's thing one of these Wednesdays, we normally do them at 3. Maybe Tom presents a little bit at the beginning about the whole thing of that to this group, because it seems like there's an interest in those here, so we can all 3 of us talk about that.
Yep, anatomy gaps. Just bring ideas, you know, which is very, very important, because I'd like to sort of from out of these chats, you just don't know what will develop. No. Any other questions? So what's our topic for next week? Let's see. Let's choose a topic. Is Mo Farah on drugs or not? Oh, sorry.
Well, I'm gonna put your email back in there again, and then anybody can email you that wants to, if they're shy.
No, but I think it's just bring any ideas, any questions, any things that you're dealing with, anything that's perplexing you from, you know, something that's been bothering you with movements. Let's see if we can actually look at it and dissect it using the concept of being gentle and the concept of stretching. Yeah.
All right, so I put that email in there. Thanks, Carmen. I put that email address in there, and also just tell other people, yeah, we bumped it back 30 minutes today because we had 300 people on a hammer presentation from Argentina. So, and I apologize cutting it short. I got to go to a local one next. They all just kind of added up today.
I think 45 minutes is ideal, unless,
yeah.
you know, we really get into some discussion.
Yeah, well, that's what we've ended up being almost an hour, so that's perfect. So, all right, well, thanks everybody, and we'll see you all next week, and maybe
thank you.
Here's somebody trying to get in here, and maybe get others to join in.
Yeah, bring other people along and then ask questions. All right.
So we're going back to the top of the hour next week, Richie?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
3 p.m.
cool.
Central. Hey, Diane, we just got you in there. We actually are just, oh, there you go. We're just finishing up. We're 3:30 Central time.
Right. I apologize. I had another
that's fine.
conflict. I was just
Well,
trying to see
I'm
if I could catch
recording
the tail
this.
end.
Yeah, I'm recording this, so it'll be up there in a few minutes. But anyway, thanks everybody, and keep telling people, and I'll put a notice back up there, back to 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. and email Nikos if you got any questions or issues. And we'll see everybody next week. And thanks for joining us, Janine. Good question there. Tell Joy hi.
Nick, I was just checking,
Yep.
would it be the same link to come on this next week?
Richie will send. Richie, can you? I'll send you Femi's.
Oh, you know what it is? You know
What?
what?
It's the same-
I bet I
it's the
forgot
same
to
link.
put that. Oh, it is the same link?
Yeah, it was the same link. Yeah.
It's a recurring
Okay, I
meeting for
did.
8 weeks.
My brain can't remember what I've done and what I
That's
haven't.
how I
Maybe I
get
did that
crushed.
on purpose.
Yeah, it comes as a recurring meeting.
Okay, yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
perfect.
That's right. That's what it is. It's a recurring meeting.
I've got a couple of practitioners I'd like to invite on this, if that's okay.
Oh, for sure. The more, the merrier.
Yeah. So if you have that link, just send that link to anybody, and then they'll be able to get in. And now I'm on my school account. Now I have to admit people when they come in, but that's easy to do. So.
Yeah, no, good
You
stuff.
know, or even,
All
hey
right.
guys, even if you guys are training for an activity, I know Jimson's been training for the World Masters. And he's got issues. I mean, this would be great because we've got a lot of people here with different ideas, and see if we can sort of put together an idea that would help him if Jimson's dealing with some issues with an ankle, a hamstring, whatever. Very, very important. All right.
All right.
Just, thanks again.
So
Thanks,
somebody send me I'll try to figure out what topic maybe for next week. All right.
All right. And it should show, you might check, it should show that it is at 3 for next week. So
Okay.
I'll double check it. Thanks
Thanks,
everybody.
guys.
That's good.
Just
Bye-bye. Be
Bye.
safe. Bye.
Bye, guys.